Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon as well. I hope you are enjoying the conference so far. I was most of the morning into it, and I had a good time there and good discussions. A very brief announcement: there will only be 2 presentations in this session because one had to cancel, unfortunately, and we agreed to stick to the half an hour each of us had for presenting and questions and answers. So the session will be finished within an hour. And the first presentation is going to be introduced by Anna Trocme, Head of Impact and Continuous Improvement at Career Ready, and Adam Wilson, Associate Director of Opinion. Both of them are going to tell us about employer engagement, boosting attainment and well-being. And I hope we have a good and lively discussion after their presentation. The floor is yours, Anna and Adam.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. It should be away. Can people see that okay? I can't see people, so hopefully you can see that. But please say if not. So good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here. As Fernando said, thank you for the introduction. My name is Anna Trocme. I am the Head of Impact and Continuous Improvement at UK social mobility charity Career Ready. Adam, do you want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, welcome. Really good to be here. My name is Adam Wilson. I'm the Associate Director at Opinion Research. We're a market research company and worked with Career Ready to take you through the data side of what we're going to talk to you today.
So we're going to present to you on how employer engagement can really boost attainment and well-being for young people, based around a piece of research that Career Ready and Opinion carried out last year. So just a little bit about Career Ready to start with. We're a UK-wide social mobility charity which works with employers, schools and colleges to prepare young people for the world of work, and in particular young people facing barriers, be they demographic, socio-economic, or perhaps related to a lack of confidence or networks or social capital. So we run 3 programs for young people aged 11 to 18, but our longest running and highest impact is our post-16 program, which is what we're going to be talking about, or what the research that we're talking about today was based on. And that program is based around a framework of 7 employability skills. We work very closely with employers, schools and colleges to run that program, and it consists of mentoring, masterclasses, workplace visits and internships or experiences of work. We've reached 72,000 young people in the past year in over 400 schools and colleges around the UK, working closely and relying on the support of about 2,000 volunteers from lots of different employers of different sizes and different sectors. And as I mentioned, we exist to support young people from diverse backgrounds and especially those who face one or more barriers to achieving their full potential. We focus on areas of disadvantage using a combination of the Careers and Enterprise Company cold spots and the indices of multiple deprivation, which means we're in 2/3 of the 50 most disadvantaged local authorities in England. Over 60% of our young people will be the first in their family to go to university, and 42% are from diverse ethnic backgrounds. Other factors we look at include eligibility for free school meals, experience of being in care, disability, gender, and so on. To mark our 18th birthday in 2020, we commissioned a longitudinal study with Opinion in order to better understand the impact that the Career Ready programme and employability programmes like it have on young people in the medium to long term. So I'm going to hand over to Adam, who led the research, and he's going to talk more about that research and some of the findings.
Brilliant, thanks Anna. So what we did to be able to almost benchmark what's the impact of the programme? Is it really changing the long-term outcomes of people who've been on the programme? Is it changing their lives? So what we did was take a quantitative and qualitative approach. So the first part of it was a kind of a test and control approach. So we managed to recruit 411 career-ready alumni, so anybody who'd taken part in the program in the last 18 years. We then matched that sample in terms of its demographics with a control sample. So we weighted and we surveyed people, recruited them based on age, gender, the region they grew up in when they were 16 years old, their ethnic background, whether they had free school meals, a whole range of different demographics, tried to match it as close as we could to the survey response we'd had from Career Ready from the alumni. So we could have that kind of test and control. So this control sample were sort of a peer group, or kind of peer comparison to the Career Ready alumni that hadn't been involved in the project or in the program, that allowed us to compare the results of those groups. We also did 10 in-depth interviews with alumni, so looking at the stories that they were telling us, how the program had impacted their life, the specific ways that they had become involved, and how it's impacted their life since. And we'll bring out a bit of a flavour of some of those in some of the slides that we take you through. And also did 5 in-depth interviews with business representatives, so people who have a very close relationship with Career Ready, who've been involved for a few years, often themselves have been mentors to people on the program and have a really good understanding of how the program works, but also they've seen these young people come into their offices, work with them for an internship or ongoing mentoring relationships, and seen how those people have grown. A number of them had maintained relationships with people they've been mentoring for years after, some of them even kind of been to their weddings and things like that. So a real close connection in many instances. Just going to take you through kind of 4 key findings that we found from the research. So again, this is primarily based on that kind of test and control. So we asked a number of different measures and looking at were they kind of statistically significantly different between our alumni and our control sample. And one of the first things that we saw was that kind of the program provides enhanced social mobility and kind of capital and social capital at a local level. So one of the things that we got into the program thinking about, or the research program thinking about, is does it allow people to stay local? And there's a lot of research around that. A lot of people move away because they think that the opportunities, particularly in somewhere like the UK and in England, are, oh, well, you have to go to a big city, you have to go to London to be able to find a job when you're kind of post-18. That's the expectation, that's where the jobs are. And actually what we saw was that people who were alumni were much more likely, well, just as likely to stay in their local area as their peers, but much more likely to say that they have that social capital. So that means that they feel like they have contacts who they could ask for to help them find work, or that they know people who have certain types of jobs. They also feel much more positive about their longer term career prospects. And that's driven by a few different things. I'll talk about the internships a bit later, but particularly that experience of the workplace, which is often local to them, but also just through meeting people in the Career Ready program, opportunities to understand what businesses there are in their local area, helps them to realise that there are jobs in their local environment. They're often not fully aware of that through schools and colleges, and they're also their knowledge of what a business does is very limited. So they might know that there's a particular kind of maybe financial company that works in the local area, but they don't know that within that financial company, there are people doing marketing roles and communications roles and other roles that aren't necessarily purely kind of finance related. So people kind of the alumni feel much more positive about their prospects, their job prospects and career prospects. And they're also able to stay in that local area. They haven't had to move away from that, which is a really positive thing in terms of helping young people to feel like they can maintain those relationships that they have with their family and their friends. They can maintain those, but they've also built in a wider social kind of network of people who they can tap into for their career aspirations. So that's one of the first things that we discovered. The second thing is increased academic and career attainment. So at the age of 16, we saw that the alumni and their peers are very much the same. And in many instances, the alumni performed less well than their peers at GCSEs, including one of the people we spoke to in the interview failed all of his GCSEs. So that their prospects and their attainment levels at that kind of age 16 often quite low. And that's often where the program kind of intervenes with people. However, when we look at where they were when they were 18 or then at 21 and where they are now, we see that they're much more likely to have gone to university and to have got a university or FE qualification. They're much more likely to be then in employment or in full-time education, where they currently are compared to their peers. But also, in terms of kind of more softer skills, they have a much stronger sense that they have workplace skills. So the confidence in the workplace, the ability to manage their time, the ability to work with other people, and their levels of confidence in terms of their future aspirations are much higher. So something really changes between that kind of being 16 and kind of 18 to 21. And that kind of, a lot of that we think is driven by being part of the Career Ready program. And a lot of that is driven by the local network of people that they know, so people they've met through the program and the people that they've actually spent their time on the internship with. One people that we spoke to who did fail his GCSEs said that the program gave him a newfound sense of self-belief. I was shocked by the amount of support I received without judgment. And he's then gone on to do, he achieved a first in business management at university, now works for Amazon as a recruitment manager. So kind of real transformation in lives in attainment, both academic and in the career. Finding number 3 is that actually we also see kind of increased well-being. So some of that is probably driven by their career aspirations and just feeling kind of more positive in life. And people did say that 87% of the alumni said that the program had a positive impact on their life. Again, there's lots of evidence that when we looked at the data showing that people just feel much more confident and much more like they kind of have the right skills for the workplace. They feel like they are much more hardworking compared to their peers. One of the things that we looked at was we used something called the satisfaction with life scale. Asked a number of different questions, and you create a kind of score for each person. And on average, the alumni had higher scores in terms of their overall satisfaction with life. And again, a lot of that is because there's a real sense of purpose, a sense of direction, and a sense that they may not have. They're still quite young, so they haven't kind of achieved the kind of pinnacle of their careers yet, but they feel like they're on a trajectory for that in a way that a lot of their peers don't feel like that. Then the final thing, and I think this is one of the most powerful things that we discovered, was the power of internships. So for 4 weeks, these young people get put into a real workplace. They do real work alongside people who are in those workplaces. And 63% of the alumni said that they would not have the careers they now have without their internship. 59% of alumni said that their internships improved their planning, and that's a key kind of workplace skill. But I think also more than that, what the internships give is a real sense of what the workplace is actually like. And a lot of these young people, in some ways, are very institutionalized. So their experience is of school primarily, and even at college, they're told what time they have to be in a lesson, what time they have their lunch breaks, what time their breaks are, what time school finishes, what time they go home. Their life is very regimented. And people were telling us, particularly some of the business representatives that we spoke to, on those first few days, when these young people come into their workplace, they are almost, many of them are very scared. They ask permission for when can I have my lunch? When can I take a break? Things that we would take for granted in the workplace in terms of owning your own time and kind of the freedom to do certain things. They've never experienced that. And actually for many, it was kind of liberating to see, okay, I need to manage my own time. I've been set tasks. I need to think about how I'm going to do this. But also the kind of teamwork that they see going out. A lot of them are going into teams. They're working alongside other people. They're also seeing that the people that they're sat around are like them. A lot of the people that are on the program feel like they're from, well, they are, as Anna was saying, kind of from disadvantaged backgrounds. And they feel that. They feel like, well, I could never be in a company like this. I could never work for this financial firm or this legal firm because I'm too different. But when they're in the workplace, they realize, actually, these people aren't that different from me. And I've got something to contribute. And I've been welcomed in. And that's a really valuable thing. That people are getting those experiences. And it helps them realize that even if let's say they've gone to have an internship at a bank, they realize, well, I don't want to work in banking, but I can see that working in an office and doing this kind of work is something I can do. And it helps them realize that what they can do, and gives a real sense of direction to them. And we think that's a really key thing that then leads to lots of the impacts that we've seen already, in that sense of, particularly a sense of confidence, a sense of direction for their future, and a real sense of positivity. It also leads to that network of people. A lot of the people we spoke to maintain contact with people that they've met in those internships. They remain kind of not necessarily friends, but they remain people that they keep in touch with through their lives and use for networking. If they're applying for jobs, they'll ask somebody to review their CV or ask them for hints and tips for how they might apply for a particular job. And so it forms really strong bonds, even though it's kind of only 4 weeks long in that instance.
So on the basis of those findings, we made some key recommendations, and the first one of which is leads on very nicely from that piece about internships, and it's that employers need to start investing or invest further in paid opportunities for young people. You know, as Adam was just talking about, they're so beneficial for the young people themselves, who are gaining invaluable skills and confidence and networks and insight, but also for the employers, who are gaining a fresh perspective. They're getting access to diverse local talent and development opportunities for their staff, among other benefits. And it's also important for social mobility and the economy as a whole, ultimately. So we believe that all employers should consider the medium to long-term investment of supporting young people in this way, and in particular young people who may not otherwise have access to these kinds of opportunities. And partnering with organisations like Career Ready can be a really good way of doing that. To further support that agenda, specifically in the UK, we've campaigned for the government to unlock the apprenticeship levy, to give employers the flexibility to use it for pre-apprenticeship activities such as internships, which could help address some budgetary constraints in the area. More specifically, on Career Ready's side, we're about to launch our 3-year strategy, which includes some pretty ambitious targets to increase the number of paid internships that we offer to young people through our employer partners. The second one is about small and medium enterprises, because there's so much that can be done to increase the prevalence and awareness of local opportunities, so that in, I think, the first finding Adam was talking about, those young people who want to stay close to where they grew up because they've got family and friends there, or because they just like it and they want to stay there, can do so while still feeling that they're getting ahead and not worrying about missing out on career opportunities. And of course, longer term, that again also supports the growth of local economies, which in the UK in particular is, I think COVID has highlighted how much of an issue that can be. Of course, many SMEs will struggle to provide paid opportunities, but we believe that this could be supported in a variety of ways. In the UK, for example, by increasing the powers of local enterprise partnerships to support SMEs, and perhaps more widely through the creation of what you might call internship investment partnerships, which would see, for example, 2 businesses splitting the cost of the internship with a young person spending time between the 2. And again, at Career Ready, we're working with some of our larger corporates to explore opportunities to partner with SMEs in that way. And then the final recommendation is around mentoring, which alongside internships can be so transformative for young people. And this recommendation is twofold. Firstly, we believe that all employers should offer some kind of mentoring program to teenagers in their local area. And again, partnering with organisations like Career Ready can really help in accessing those young people and forming relationships with schools. And secondly, we believe the support should continue once people enter the workplace, because of course an individual's background is often a limiting factor in entering the workplace and getting to that point, but it doesn't unfortunately stop there. It can continue to limit them in terms of progression and so on. So it's important not to consider that entering of the workplace or entering higher education as a final destination, but to keep working on that. And then finally, in addition to the short and long-term benefits all of this brings to young people, there are really far-reaching benefits for volunteers and employers as well. We recently carried out a piece of research with over 400 career-ready volunteers and employer partners, focusing specifically on the impact that working with us has had on them. And the results were really encouraging. For example, nearly 9 out of 10 volunteers experienced at least one benefit to them from volunteering. So either skill development or improved well-being or an improvement in their working life. And there are lots of organisations doing really good things across the world in this space. But as a sector, we need to move beyond focusing too much on just the short to medium term impact on the young people that we're trying to support, but also start to think about how as a collective we move towards affecting system change. So it could be factors like improving employers' understanding of social mobility, diversity, and the challenges young people face. And volunteers can be crucial there in feeding learning back to their organisations, back to senior colleagues. It can be about empowering employers to better understand and support colleagues from all backgrounds. And it can be about supporting employers to adopt fairer or more accessible recruitment processes. For example, one of our biggest employer partners has recently introduced an apprenticeship scheme because they found that by recruiting only graduates, and graduates from a fairly small pool of universities at that, they were limiting the talent that they were accessing, whereas in reality, not all roles needed a degree. So we'd like to see more and more of that kind of thing happening across the board. So in summary then, employer engagement can have a massive impact on boosting the attainment, well-being and general life chances of young people. But at the same time, it's crucial to recognise that for employers, this kind of activity isn't limited to box ticking for ESG or CSR requirements, or even doing the right thing, although it is both of those things. But there are really tangible benefits to be had as well in terms of talent acquisition and employee engagement, and ultimately a longer term economic benefits as well. So the report is available to read on our website or search by searching Career Ready at 18. But for now, I will stop sharing and we can move to any questions. Stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Anna and Adam, for the perfect timing in your presentation. And we're now open to questions. Anyone who wants can either raise the hand or just put on the microphone and jump in.
I've got a quick question. Hi, wasn't sure whether to raise my hand or not. I'm Gillian Wiley. I'm a research executive at Skills Development Scotland. That was a great presentation. It's really interesting. I'm involved in a piece of work looking at the long-term outcomes of apprenticeships in Scotland, but looking more at the sort of softer non-economic outcomes that you mentioned there. So that was really interesting. I've just got two, I think they're quick questions. First one is, you might have mentioned this, but how long was it since participants left the programme that you conducted the research? So just a sense of what you mean by long-term outcomes. And the second question, just looking for some further information on the control group. So how did you identify them? How did you engage in recruit them in the research? And also whether you encountered any issues with your control group and how they might be different to the treatment group, and how you addressed that if there were any issues.
Adam, do you want to take both of those? Is that all right?
Yeah, so in terms of the accessing the control group, what we did was we did the research in two waves. So we did a wave of it was approximately 200 alumni, and then we looked at the demographics of that alumni, and we identified the split between the kind of gender, age, all those kinds of different demographics, but basically as many demographics as we could. We then we did all the research online, so we used online panel providers within the UK. So we basically sent them a specification for this is what we need. They then recruited 250, those matching people. We then surveyed another 200 alumni, and then made sure that again that we had that exact kind of grouping. We weighted the control group. to be the same as the alumni group, so that the weighting efficiency was fairly minimal, but it helps you to counter for things like where the genders and ages kind of overlap and things like that. In terms of encountering any issues, not hugely. I think we were fairly able to recruit those people. I think yeah, I think that's that question. And then the first question was on, I just had it, I've just forgotten. Sorry, Jill, remind me of the
How long
question.
was it since?
Sorry, that's right, yes. So we it was interesting because Career Ready has contact details for most people, but there were some who, particularly early on in the program, we had to kind of spend quite a lot of time, people at Career Ready, trying to find their details and doing LinkedIn searches and things like that for people, particularly because at that point the program was very small. So we went to people who had been on the program 18 years ago. So we had a handful of people. Most people who took part in the research would have taken part in the program in the sort of last 6 to 8 years. So they're in their kind of, by this point they're in their sort of mid 20s, early to mid 20s.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a question from Sita Williams. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Oh, hi, everyone. This is Sita from over in California. And I've worked with, some career pathways in high schools. And I used to place high school interns into internships. And obviously there's a lot of benefits to that. But I was wondering if you have any perspective on, paid versus unpaid. We gave school credits, but I could really see how, getting that paycheck could be really helpful. So if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So generally our position is that work experience can be unpaid. So in our definition, that we would say that's probably up to about 2 weeks, and that's more along your kind of shadowing, doing more kind of general tasks and just kind of getting a sense of what it's about. But any longer than that, and we believe there's an ethical consideration there about unpaid internships, particularly with the kinds of young people that we're working with, who may not be able necessarily to take on an internship if it's unpaid, because otherwise they would have to be doing part-time work or whatever it might be during that time. So yeah, generally we say no to unpaid.
Right. Do you find that it's hard to find employers who will pay?
It can be, but the reality is that the employers are increasingly getting on board and kind of seeing the value of it. So if the student's with them for, let's say, 4 weeks, then they're kind of doing a real job. A lot of the time employers are saying, well, we got the intern to do something, like let's say a competitor analysis or something like that. That's kind of a thing that we needed to do, but we just haven't had the time to do it. So it's actually just an extra resource. So the fact that they're benefiting there from that young person, and also in the longer term, they might therefore, if they're getting access to the talent, they're potentially keeping in touch with their interns, as Adam was saying. So it's about trying to get them to see the longer term benefits, I think, a lot of the time.
Fabulous, thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Anyone? And good morning, California.
Thank you, it's been a long night.
I think we can move on to your one, Fernando.
Okay. So again, good morning and good afternoon for most of you. We have heard in the previous presentation about disadvantage, about mentoring, and about transforming people's lives. And that's what I'm going to tell you about now in this presentation, which is a piece of research we have conducted in the past years in what is called work integration social enterprises, a kind of enterprise that is regulated in Spain and also in other countries in Europe, and where employers engage in preparing people, ex-offenders, ex-addicted, people with a migrant background, or early school leavers, and they prepare them for work and for citizenship as well, already with a contract, with a paid contract, right? 4 of us have prepared this paper, a sociologist, a social worker, and 2 educationalists, and that's what we're going to present. Briefly, we'll tell you something about the context of these companies in Spain, also about our research, our method, and our 3 approaches from each of the 3 academic backgrounds. We will try to illustrate what we are explaining with some findings, and then we will try to bring you to a couple of debates that we think are relevant and which basically refer to the question, are these companies inclusive and meaningful devices for transition and re-entering society or not, right? So briefly about the context, work integration, social enterprises in Spain have the purpose of being transition companies where people can be hired up to 3 years before jumping into the ordinary labor market, because these companies have this specific purpose of providing and fostering social inclusion through a contract, a working contract, a paid working contract with all working rights, but also with the aim to teach, to train these people and to help them learn to work and to re-enter society. In order to do that, there are 3 kinds of workers in these companies: production workers, which would be the ordinary workers, then integration workers, which are the workers which are hired for this transition period of up to 3 years, so they have to move out. So to say, they enter these companies for the same reason that they would be fired in most companies, because they lack some skills. And when they are about to leave the company, it's because other companies would be hiring them. So this is the kind of contradiction that these companies, work integration companies, have to handle, to hire someone in bad condition, and once the person is ready and fit for work, to send that person out to the ordinary labor market. And then to support that process, they also have accompanying workers or job coaches or mentors. So workers in the company who also have the specific role of leading these people and helping these people to promote and to develop personally, socially, and as workers as well. And there are a couple of employee organizations supporting these companies. In Spain, we have FAEDE, the Spanish Federation of Work Integration Companies, and AERES, the Spanish Association of Social and Solidarity Economy. And then in Europe, we have the NCA platform, which is the platform for work integration companies. And as I told you, we have legal support since 2007. In Spain, there were last year 185 companies hiring around 7,000 people, out of which 4,200 were these integration workers in the process of transition, right? And more than half of them were able to find a job after getting out of the company. And also 22% of them were able to find a job within the work integration company as production workers. What is the kind of research we have conducted? We have been conducting research in 7 Spanish regions, in 12 companies, 7 of them in the sector of recycling. 1 of them was an industrial laundry, 3 catering companies, and 1 care service company. We have observed and interviewed 45 integration workers along 3 years. We have interviewed 24 job and life coaches of these people, so production workers and accompanying workers in these companies, about the learning processes of these integration workers. And we have also conducted 59 questionnaires among job coaches and life coaches in order to find out what are their leadership practices along this period of 3 years. And which are our approaches? From an educational perspective, we have used Michael Roth's theory on learning trajectories. He has used this notion instead of competencies. He has devised a series of 8 different learning trajectories. And after checking with him, we decided that 5 of those were relevant for the low qualification jobs that work integration companies provide. And those 5 learning trajectories are task performance, role performance, awareness and understanding, which is the key element in this presentation this afternoon, personal development and teamwork. And the questions we wanted to address by using this theoretical approach is, are these 5 learning trajectories relevant for developing autonomy of the integration workers? Are they useful in that purpose? And are they supporting the people at an individual level or also as citizens? So are they bringing in some collective dimension of what rejoining society means? Then a second approach we used was that of the full range leadership by Abolio and Bass. This theory says that there are 3 basic styles of leadership: transformational leadership, transactional leadership, and laissez-faire leadership. And we believe that this full range theory might apply properly to the accompanying process along these 3 years. And we expected to find an evolution in the way that accompanying and job workers, production workers, were providing support on leadership to the integration workers by moving from transformational and transactional into a laissez-faire towards the end of the period. So moving from a process where the individual is more dependent at the beginning of the process to a final stage where the individual is autonomous and therefore can jump into the ordinary labor market. And the questions we had here are, are these different styles distributed differently among the support staff? We expected accompanying workers to have more of the transformational style, while we expected job coaches to have more of this transactional style, and both of them moving towards the laissez-faire. And that was our second question. Will they change their style along time, or is the style attributed to the person in charge and not changeable? And third, we use also the approach, the sociological approach towards labor relations by Robert Castell and Paugam, who deal with the issues that vulnerable people have to do when they are forced to integrate into society, not through employment very often, but through the fostering of employability, which is a notion that has in a way replaced employment. And how this notion of employability shapes the identity formation of vulnerable people who want to get out of that vulnerable condition and who want to become ordinary people. So our question there was, are these companies facilitating adaptation of people to a situation where they might be subject to precarious jobs, as we were listening to in the opening sessions this morning? Or are these companies preparing people for emancipation, so to allow them to run their own lives in the way they want, right? And so these were our approaches. And here I want to get some more into detail, because as Castell and Paugam say, the experience of having experienced exclusion, of being vulnerable, puts the subject, the individual, in a position within a reified social structure where their own identities are often neglected, negated, made invisible, or stereotyped, which forces these people to lack control over their own life and to be dependent upon others, be it social services or social workers providing them with support to get out of prison, to get out of addictions, to get out of prostitution, to become ordinary members of society and forget about their migrant background, or to adapt to conditions, right? And so very often some social work practices, instead of fostering emancipation, favor passive subjectivities. And we wanted to see whether these people who had experienced those situations of exclusion, when given a contract in a work integration company, were being promoted towards empowerment. So if you provide them with stability, with strengthening links in the company and out of the company, with recognition in terms of the contract, of the wage, but also of the person, its identity, its rights. Also through this leadership projects process and accompanying process with reflexive and critical understanding of life, do we make people more competent and to be able to have some self-control over their lives? And that we wanted to see through this key learning trajectory of awareness and understanding, right? Thinking that the accompaniment process is one of recognition of interpersonal relations. It is a daily work that they have to do, but it also consists of a systematic, reflexive, dialogic follow-up where the person receives feedback in order to develop its own criteria and to develop its own purpose in life, right? They do this through a personalized itinerary that is participated by the accompanying worker and the integration worker on the other side. And this itinerary is competence-centered. Everything is around the job that this person is developing, right? So where performance is a key element there, right? And very often solving conflicts and providing social support networks is a dimension that happens in everyday life, in working life, and that might be useful for this integration process, right? So we wonder, and that's our question, research question, whether the context is a source for possibilities and limitation or limitations in order to move forward into the labor market and to develop the agency of people there, right? What did we find? What are our results? Well, we have seen that the organization is an organization that supports people and that provides qualification. It does so by providing relations with the institution and relations also with the productive system. By working in the company, you relate to the people in your own company, but you also relate to providers, to customers. And that is an element, a dynamic, which is useful to bring the people back into ordinary life, right? A second relevant issue is the organization of production activities, which is often done in teamwork, where conflict arises, but also people have to learn to develop their social skills, and where levels of productive demand and work rhythm can increase along these 3 years. And therefore, there is some understanding of the difficulties at the beginning of the process, but there is also the ordinary pressure of working life being introduced along the process. And furthermore, if the organization has different jobs, different positions, you can rotate people among them, and you can train people across placements within different positions inside the same company. And that demands for sure a kind of leadership on the side of human resources in the company that applies already in the access to the company and the linkages that the company provides for the worker, for the newcomer, but also the support provided along the time and the diversity of staffs and relations that is involved in the process. This is not a job just conducted by one person, but this is an organizational issue. A second dimension has to do with the level of structuration of the job, which varies. We have found that in our research between intuition and systematization. Also through the different perception of integration workers of being in this structured process. There are people who, because of their past vulnerable experience, reject any kind of support, who feel they don't need any support, who say, I already have a contract, why should I need any support, any accompaniment, any mentorship? I got what I needed, a job. And the company tries to provide an structuration that also allows people to raise consciousness. Who am I? What are my chances? Where am I located? What is the context? What are my expectations when I get out of this company? Because this is not a company I have been hired for to develop the rest of my career within the company, but this is a company that will farewell me once I'm done with the process, right? And in order to do that, the company has these different phases with different intensity of support provided. where the longest phase is the least planned because it is the competence development phase in between the welcome phase and the transition phase into the ordinary labor market, right? And there is, of course, an intense effort in the final stage in the company when you have to prepare people to leave the company, which is hard to understand. They say, I am now a good worker. Why would you want to get rid of me now? And you have to remind the people that it is stated so by law and it was agreed at the very beginning, but it is always a hard issue that brings difficulties into the transition phase, right? I think I am running out of time, so I'm moving forward. I had a couple of illustrations here of from practice. So one company called The Stall, or another one, My Nice Laundrette, where staff development is arranged around self-direction of people with a strong focus upon occupational development and personal development, while also fostering social skills and providing an expansive learning environment where professional development of accompanying workers is a key issue to support people and to achieve the aim of being promoted as a person and production being a subsidiary element supporting this educational aim of the company. We have also this other example. The Sparrow is the fictitious name of this company, where the allocation and structuring of work is very relevant because it is a small size, but a company with a managerial structure that allows for these positions. Encounters and relationships with people at work make of the group working there a relevant group of helpful others that provide recognition to to integration workers, and also a sense of belonging, which is relevant to become someone normal or ordinary, even if this belonging sense comes to an end when you invite a person to leave the company and jump into the ordinary labor market and look for another position elsewhere. And then the individual participation and expectations in this company is arranged around developing competence, being competent, feeling competent, and being acknowledged that competence by others in the company. That is facilitated, as I said at the beginning, by the circulation of staff, of progression along different positions. And I move now to one case, Pepu, working in the Sparrow. He is a man, 46, divorced since 33. He lives with his mother. He had a past experience of some addictions, and towards the end of his process in the Sparrow, he was able to explain properly how he had learned to be responsible in professional terms, to be responsible before other people, to be responsible before himself, his own life, and to be responsible, to take responsibility about his own future, to plan his own future, to say where he wanted to go from this company, right? And we had a second example here, Tony, a woman, 41, working in the Stall, divorced since 33, with 2 kids and a past and present experience of alcoholism, because this was an issue during her process in the company. And she was eager to plan her own life. She felt the need to take control, even if she was falling into alcoholism different times along her process there. He was in a clear search of recognition and entering interaction with others, and he had a strong sense of will to feel normal. Tony, 41, could enjoy her first holiday once she was working in the Stall. And it was an issue for her what to do with her holiday, because she had been working since she was 14 in the informal economy, and she didn't know what to do with a holiday. It was something new for her, and something that was a problem for her, how to manage a holiday with her 2 kids, what to do with them, because it was a new experience. right? And in order to finish my presentation, the two issues we consider here is, are these companies re-educating people? Are they helping them to provide a personal reconstruction through skilling, upskilling, or reskilling because of the different ages that they have? Are these companies developing a certain work ethics inside an occupation and inside the organization that is useful in the ordinary labor market? Or is it a far too protected company? Are they facilitating participation and citizenship of these people, or are they empowering them just in individual levels? And are they able to provide them with a qualification that is recognizable in the ordinary labor market and therefore to make them more employable in the end? And this relates to the issue of progress. Are people in these companies able to progress? Here we have seen that the welcome stage is crucial. The support beyond the workplace and not just within the workplace is also relevant. I think of Toni and her alcoholism problem. There needs to be more effort invested in the difficult transitions into the ordinary labor market. And we have also discovered in our research that social services and employment services inhibit themselves of this process. They said, we have sent you there, you have now a contract, so we can forget about you, while this support should be crucial to facilitate their further development. And then another question is, are these companies able to raise consciousness of people to improve their acknowledgement, their expectations? So in the end, are these companies moving between education and production, and what is the balance or imbalance there? And between emancipation and adaptation of people, and again, what is the balance there, right? And I will leave it here. We have some things published already, and we expect to publish some more. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. Natasha, I think you've got a question there. Your hand's up. Do you want to unmute?
Yeah, Fernando, thank you very much for your really interesting presentation. I have sort of two questions. The first one is about, and apologies if I missed it, but how this integration work is being recruited, because I would have thought that some of them probably would be quite difficult to reach out. So I would be interested in terms of, you know, how, what sort of strategies and it's, what's the process of reaching out to these adults. And the second question, I would be quite interested to know, how do you conceptualize, or how you see the concept of citizenship within this project? Because you mentioned it several times, but what would it involve, sort of, you know, as a positive outcome in terms of young adults to become good citizen?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha. Good question. The first one, I didn't explain anything about that. The legal framework we have in Spain for these companies says that it is social services that have to direct people they are serving towards these companies. And in some regions, it is not social services, but employment services. But so the people are already within the network of the administration support or that umbrella, right? It is true that many work integration companies are companies that are supported by non-for-profit organizations who have also either shelter homes or programs for people coming out of prison or homes. And therefore, they already have some people with whom they are working that then they direct towards the social services to get back. But the recruitment, of course, the last word about the recruitment it belongs to the company and the staff in the company, but people have to reach it through the either social or employment services. And therefore there's already an administrative gate there, because these companies receive some financial support for the kind of work they do, right? So I hope that is clear now. And about the notion of that is that we, in order to sort that out, we think in Robert Castle and the distinction between exclusion, vulnerability, and inclusion. And being included means being a person who is not just autonomous or self-supported, but also a person who is caring or interested in social affairs, be it in the neighborhood or in a union, or and that is the key behind our question: are we adapting people or are we liberating people? These companies, what are they doing? Citizenship means not just leaving you on your own, no matter how independent you are, but also developing a sense of belonging and of relation to the others, this social responsibility, right? But I write down your point, and we will try to elaborate further on that notion, because perhaps we use it without properly defining it. Thank you.
Thanks, Fernando. It's really interesting, because we had a sort of, quite similar interpretation of citizenship in my recent Horizon 2020 project, when we also looked at how vulnerable young adults improve their life chances. And we considered citizenship not just political involvement, but also in terms of economic and social inclusion, sort of, you're a good citizen through your being active in your family life, community life, developing your employability skills. So that's really interesting that we can follow up on this. It would be quite interesting to know more about how you proceed with this. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for another question.
I've got a question. I wanted to know if there was anything that really surprised you or that you weren't expecting that you found in this work. Anything where you had an idea of how something was going to go and then it was different.
Very good. Great question. I think at least three issues were shocking for us. The first one, the huge effort that companies put in the welcoming phase, so the adaptation phase of the worker, and that includes employability diagnostic and measurement, and they develop a lot of tools to support people in this phase. And all that effort suddenly disappears after the first 3-5 months. And there is no, in most companies, there is no further measurement of employability skills, for instance. And if you have already measured them at the very beginning, it would be easy to keep track on how that is evolving, right? So that's one issue. This issue is also related to the amount, and this is a second surprise to us, the large amount of informal processes that are not recorded in any way. There are a lot of interactions, a lot of feedback provided to workers, but it is not registered very often. It is only verbally shared. And this being understandable in a working context where you use your time to produce what you are producing, whatever it is, it brings in difficulties at later stages, because things that have been told, people tend to forget. And things that have not been agreed in written form, people can also go around them. And therefore, this lack of formality or this scarce formality which is supportive in certain ways, turns out a problem when you want to discuss with the person progress, but also problems that or obstacles that the person may be finding in the process. So that's the second issue. A third shocking issue for us was to see that we had assigned the most relevant role to accompanying workers, to the mentors. And we discovered that because of the daily relation that integration workers have to production workers, to job coaches, it is job coaches, the ones who keep better track of what is the progress of the person, who know how to deal with, who are able to find the right occasion to talk about something that happened this morning, and instead of reacting right away, I wait after to the coffee time when I can share that on a side sphere or whatever. So this is relevant because those who have training as mentors are the accompanying workers, and yet because they don't have that often interaction with the person, they are also often neglected by others, by those workers who say, you're not a model for me. My reference model is the worker I work with every day, the person I go with in the van, or the person I'm side by side at the laundry, and not you who are in your office and come down here every fortnight or so. So those three areas were surprising for us, so to say. And then we also discovered that even if most companies have a qualification reference in the national framework for qualifications, very often, even if they train the people get out of the company without having achieved this vocational qualification. And that's the trouble, because we are in a meritocratic society and the accreditation is relevant as well. So 3 years is time enough to help these people achieve the accreditation. So more effort should be put there. Those would be the 4 areas, I think, as more surprising, or that diverted our attention from our initial purpose in research. Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that we've run out of time. So it's just to say thank you, time to say thank you to the speakers for sharing their work with us. And please stay in touch and go back to the platform to find out more or engage with the speakers. All of the presentations will be kept on there.
Thank you very much. Had a good afternoon or a good day in California.
Thank you.
Thank you.